Series in our church and hopefully era in our church life. We have watched many of our leaders fight and fuss about simple things, and somehow or another they don't get anything done. But that doesn't stop us from doing something on our own scale, on our own level. Yesterday, we had 30 people who were certified to be mental health first aid persons. We don't know what that'll mean. We don't know where those people will be when and who they'll be able to help. But that's doing something about mental health. And today, as we talk about violence, we talk about it from an inspirational and biblical basis. We also need to have an understanding of what's happening beyond our walls. And we're blessed today to have Brother Edward Johnson. He's the Public Policy Director of the Columbus Public Health Commission, Health Department. He's going to come and share with us out of his heart, out of his experience, out of his research and resources, what our city is doing and what we can help them do with respect to violence. Let's praise the Lord as Brother Johnson comes.
Good morning. Does the Lord ever take you down a path where you think, I'm not prepared for this? Where you stand in front of a conservatory of music ministers, about 40 of them, and you say, I can't follow that. And then the Lord puts you in front of another minister and you say, I don't know if I can follow that, until you hear the message and you say, I think this is going to work. So I know I'm here representing Columbus Public Health, but let me virtually clock out for a second because that message was so inspirational and say it fit with a Bible passage that is very important to me, Ephesians 2:8. For it is by grace that you have been saved through faith, a free gift from God. That's the moment I knew this was going to work. So let me clock back in now. My name's Edward Johnson, and I'm the Policy Director for Columbus Public Health. I bring you greetings on behalf of our Mayor Andrew J. Ginther, on behalf of my boss, the Commissioner, Dr. Mashika Roberts. I'm here to talk to you about the Violent Crime Review Group. This is a very new initiative that Mayor Ginther asked to be brought together after 2017. I don't know if anyone remembers what happened in our city in 2017, but it was the year in which we had the highest number of recorded homicides in the city of Columbus. We looked around and we saw violence, and we said, you got to do something. We don't know if it's going to work, but you got to try. You got to put in the effort. So we worked to reduce the number of homicides in 3 target neighborhoods by bringing together 9 different departments. Before this group met, the response to a homicide was led by one department, the Division of Police. And that's okay, and we get that, and we understand why that may have happened in the past. But now we bring together the Health Department, the Police Department, the Department of Neighborhoods, Public Safety, Recreation and Parks. We have a new group called the CARE Coalition, which is a group of social workers and community health workers. We bring together the Department of Development and our city attorney's office to work in 3 target neighborhoods where we saw the greatest need. And you hear these neighborhoods all the time: Linden, the Hilltop, the South Side. That's where we started. We may end up growing from there as the needs grow. Now that started in 2017, and we brought those neighborhoods online within the span of about 9 months to respond to these homicides. So what happens? There's a homicide in one of the neighborhoods. Within 24 hours, those 9 groups, those 9 agencies are brought together to create a plan of action. How are we going to respond to the community that's also left behind by this act of violence? How are we going to say something bad happened? And it's not just the decedent that was affected, and it's not even just the family of the decedent that was affected. It was neighbors. We talked about when gunshots go off, what happens to those stray bullets? We have to bring those 9 departments together to say, what is the plan of action to show this community that you're being thought of, that we understand this terrible thing happened, and that you're going to need help just as much as the family's going to need help. The help comes not only for saying, let's reduce homicides, but bringing that community and making it whole again. So those are the things we work on. In 2018, we only worked for about half of the year because that's when we were finally set up. Unfortunately, we had 20 homicides that we investigated that year. It was as young as 19, and it was as old as 56. 17 of them were men, 15 were black. Of those 20 homicides, 18 were gunshots. 13 were in Linden. We know where it happens, we know how it happens, and we know to whom it happens. These are things that weren't difficult to figure out, but you have to have the data there to say it. You have to know it. I won't lie to you, the phone calls aren't easy. You get a report, you learn of the circumstances. Some of them, not a lot, are tragic. A stray bullet from a different incident that missed the intended target hit somebody. Those are the saddest, and I won't lie to you about that. Some of them are very specific. I had beef with somebody. I couldn't suppress my personality, my ego. I was mad, I was insulted, and I went after that person and I got him. This year, we've met 38 times for 38 homicides, and it was more grim. The youngest victim was 14. Young man, Xavier Quinn, he was an incoming freshman at St. Francis de Sales High School. His situation wasn't even a targeted act of violence. He and his family member were playing with a gun in the backyard. Playing. They couldn't get the gun to fire. So his cousin said, "Let me see that." Click, click, boom. A total accident. A tragedy that brought a community together, unfortunately, under those circumstances. Of the 39 homicide victims this year that we've investigated, 35 were killed with a gun. 31 were black. 31 were also male. It's young black men that are unfortunately the victims of these terrible incidents. So seeing that, how did we respond? We went to 1,300 homes as a result of those 30 incidents, and we knocked on the door to say, do you need anything? Can we help you? We understand that something bad happened. Now, of those 1,300 homes, 275 folks answered the door. Of those 39 total homicides, we were able to contact 22 next of kin to let them know that they had lost someone they loved. When I say that this affects an entire community, I mean it. Our social workers told us a story that they had gone out to canvass for a homicide. The woman that answered the door was about 10 houses down from where the incident occurred. And she thanked them for coming because she said, last night, I took my 2 children. We went to the bathroom. I put them in the tub, and I laid on top of them for 2 hours straight until I knew that the shooting had stopped. Because if someone was going to be hit by a bullet, it was going to be me and not my babies. That's why we respond. Because she didn't know if anybody cared. She didn't know if the community even cared that someone 10 houses down had died. She didn't know if anybody cared that she had to do what she had to do. That's why we have to have a community that responds to violence, not just prevents it, not just talks about the homicide itself. 6 times, we found that the mental health of our community was in such peril that we just set up a pop-up clinic in those neighborhoods to say, we're here, there's a presence. If you need someone to talk to, come talk to us. We can't fix what happened, but we're willing to hear you out on what we can do. Residents talked about vacant and abandoned houses in their neighborhoods. We identified 1,300 as a result of the incidents that we've observed. And we said, these are problematic. We need to do better placemaking. We have to make sure that the grass is mowed. We need to make sure that this doesn't look like a house that will attract violence, that will attract illegal activity that surrounds violence. And so we've tried our best. And I'm not saying we're perfect, but we're trying our best on that one. I told you the number of folks that we've reached knocking on doors and the next of kin that we've reached. Another thing we observed about violence in our neighborhoods, streetlights. We've had to repair streetlights, about 40 of them, in targeted areas where we said, we're noticing a lot of homicides in these areas, and as we go and we do an assessment, we say, it's darkly lit. It doesn't look like a place that you would want to make home. It looks like a place that if you wanted to do something you weren't supposed to be doing, I'd go right there. So as we respond, we see the need to move to prevention of violence. And what have we observed? What if I told you that violence, the spread of violence, looks exactly like the spread of a communicable disease, like the flu or the common cold? I have violence, I can give violence to you really easy. But just like it's not all your fault, as Pastor said, it's not your fault that you get sick, it's your fault for how long you stay sick. There's treatment there. That's what we have to talk about. What we know in studying these incidents and in looking at violence in other cities, there's not a lot of people in cities that are violent. Most violent crimes, they're committed by a very small number of the population. And if this person commits a violent crime, we know that the 15 people in their immediate social network, not Facebook, but the people they socialize with, they're more likely to commit the same exact violent crime as well. So one person commits a homicide, you find the 15 people closest to them because they're most likely to commit a homicide as well. How do we find those individuals that we already know, this person committed a homicide? We have to wrap our arms around the individuals that they socialize with to say, you are starting down a path. You're starting down a path that can get you in a pine box or behind bars. We want to wrap our arms around you. We want to give you the services. Tell us what it is that you think stops you from being the best version of you possible. Is it education? Can we connect you with those services? Is it job placement or job training? Can we connect you with those services? Is it medical care? So in the coming year, one thing that we're going to be looking at as the health department as a pilot project, we're going to go sit at Grant Medical Center's emergency room, and we're going to look for victims of violent crimes, gunshot wounds and stabbings. And we're going to tell them, violence is a communicable disease, and you got the bug. What can we do for you? Can I wrap these services around you? I've got a counselor, I've got a social worker. They're willing to connect you to just about anything we can. Are you going to take it? But we're here for you. And we're going to see how that goes. Now, we picked Grant Medical because we said it's right there in the middle of the action, and it's right there in the middle of our 3 target neighborhoods. Ohio Health, our great partners in this, saw this program that we were coming up with, and they said, how can we help? And we said, we got to make sure they get the services. And they said, we can help with that. How about we help these folks get incentives to stay in these programs for at least 18 months? We feel like if we can make that intervention, we're creating a unique approach for our community that says we're not just going to stop you from committing violence and expect you to go off and do your own thing. We're going to say we have a vested interest in it, because if you give the bug to someone else, that's another problem with another 15 folks that we have to deal with, and we don't want to. We want to stop it here, and we want to stop it now. The Lord has given us the reason to eliminate diseases in this world. I don't know the last time I heard about a smallpox outbreak anywhere on the planet. If violence acts like a communicable disease, it is within our reason in our minds, it is within the love in our hearts to stamp it out if we believe in it. So we're going to start working with partners. Some of those partners are going to start being at the courthouse, but some of those partners are going to be in the community too, because we need a unique approach for Columbus. Help us place make. What does that mean? Help us create these communities that will report things. They don't have to be big things, they don't have to be acts of violence, but help us know when those streetlights are out. Help us know when that house across the street is playing music way too loud, people coming and going, in and out, because that's usually an indication that there's something not great going on. That's the type of vigilance that will help us, that we've noticed as we're taking the preliminary information and the preliminary data after these incidents. Our Department of Development with code enforcement comes back and says, oh yeah, that house had a noise violation twice a week, every week for the past 2 years. That's starting to be helpful to know, isn't it? We can also say, oh, this house where this incident happened, that's been abandoned for the past 3 years. We didn't even know anyone was going in and out of it. Creating that community is the best thing that I can recommend. It sounds too easy, doesn't it? Be a community, check in, be vigilant. But it's the best thing that helps us do our job. It's the best thing that lets us identify the folks that have this communicable disease of violence, so that we can reach out to them, so that we can reach out to their networks. I think that we can do this as Columbus. I think that we can reduce our homicide rate to much lower than it ever was in 2017, lower than it was last year, and lower than what it'll end up being this year. But the health department can't do it by itself, police can't do it by itself, none of those 9 agencies can do it by itself. It's a strong community and strong neighborhoods that will help us know where to intervene, that will help us know how to do that which we need to do for our most vulnerable residents and citizens. So that's a little bit about what we're doing at the health department, and I would turn it back over to Dr. Weiser. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to do my best to answer them, but thank you for having me this morning. I've greatly appreciated the service.
Okay, we're going to have him answer a couple of questions. I think that's a very good information. I didn't know all of that. Did y'all know that was going on? I didn't know that was going on. That's a very thoughtful approach to violence. And maybe we have some mics. People want to ask questions. Anybody want to ask a question? Just a second. Just in case, just in case, just in case. Here's somebody over here, Patrick. Ms. Veronica.
Thank you. Thank you. As far as the darkened neighborhoods and the street lights, how do we, because you can call and say, hey, it's dark here, we need a street light, but how do we actually get a street light put on our block or cul-de-sac?
So I'm gonna give you 2 answers.
Okay.
I gotta give you the official answer first.
All right.
Okay, because I'm on the clock. Not kidding. The first answer is to contact our 311 system. Mm-hmm. Okay, 311. It's online. I believe it's 645 31111. Let them know all that information, and that helps us because at least it's in the system first. Because this would never happen, right? If it goes beyond the timeline that they give you for the installation, I would either contact City Council or I would contact myself, and I will get it to the appropriate person to say, listen, we're in a target neighborhood, we're talking about streetlights, or even not in a target neighborhood, but we'll still work on it because we're trying to prevent violence before it ever happens. We'll say, we got to do something. We got to do something. This is a priority, not just of the health commissioner, but of the mayor. Safe, well-made, place-made neighborhoods. Is that helpful?
It is.
just wanted to ask, what level is the police department involved with all of the helps of all these other departments?
Absolutely. So
What's their role?
So in the Violent Crime Review Group, the police department, they're the ones who they activate the notifications. They're the ones who inform us that there has been a homicide. We don't have detectives and investigators on staff personally. So they inform us about what's going on. Their primary role in the response, working with our recreation and departments park, is to say, is there a threat of retaliation before we go and we send our social workers and our community health workers out there, because we don't want to put our team in danger. And so that's something that they're usually pretty aware of in terms of informing the response to the situation. Now, we are working with them on how do we prevent violence and helping use their community liaison officers more as a primary tool as opposed to, necessarily beat cops or obviously homicide detectives. Is that helpful?
Good morning.
Good morning.
For those of us who don't live in those areas, Linden, South, Hilltop, is there anything that we can do to help with ending the violence in those communities?
Absolutely. So one thing that we have noticed is that when we do a lot of our canvassing, and obviously folks don't necessarily always live where they worship and things like that, it's still helpful to help to engage in the life of the community. One thing that hasn't always been helpful for the Linden community in particular, as I think about it, is a lot of folks there aren't violent. A lot of folks that are committing homicides in Linden don't live in Linden. They see this as an area, folks who are inclined to commit these acts feel as if they can go into Linden to do it, to get away with it. And that's not helpful. So where's the counterbalance? Where are the folks who say, I want to go to Linden, I want to go to Hilltop, and I want to go to Southside because it's a good place to be. There's community there are good people there, and there are good things going on there. The best thing that can help for folks on the outside is to let's create some good news going on in those neighborhoods, would be my advice. Are we having events in other places that maybe we could have them in Linden, whether that's North Linden or South Linden, to say, no, this is a place that people go into to do great things. So that would be my advice on that front. We do not for what we're doing currently. I think that there is an opportunity in the future, but because some of what we're doing has a medical basis and some of it has an investigatory basis from the Division of Police, that information isn't always the most shareable. But when we do kind of the outreach clinics after an incident, we probably could plug into those neighborhood apps to say, you'll see some folks in, bright blue polo shirts walking around knocking door to door. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm right here. I'm sorry. I
there
could
you
have stood up. My question is, I'm currently a site coordinator for an after-school program where we service at-risk youth, and we have a partnership with Columbus Public Health, and it's the YES program. My question is, when it comes to violence, and the YES program is only serviced for a certain amount of children, I feel like our youth will be one of the places that we can actually speak more of the violence into, and then it could be peer on peer, because I believe children learn better from their peers. And could we think about maybe bringing that into more peer groups or putting that into more schools? Because the school that I'm employed at, it's not any of those neighborhoods, but maybe bringing you guys' coalition into the schools maybe, and then we could kind of spread it like a fire there.
Absolutely, and that's a great idea, and we'll have to connect because one of our partners, the Department of Recreation and Parks, through their APPS program, are working on some of our gun violence prevention messaging, and they've said, listen, we gotta get everyone who's wearing a suit out of the room. You don't count, kids aren't going to listen to you, get out of here. And they've said, we got to have this on this peer-to-peer model, because when we did a focus group with them, they basically said, oh yeah, you know, I've seen a gun. We're like, well, what did you do? Nothing. And they said, they don't recognize a lot of these things, and so we're trying to work on creating that peer curriculum, because we had one young man say, you know, we asked, have you been affected by violence? And he said, my brother got shot, but I didn't. And we said, there's some post-traumatic stress that you're going to be dealing with here if you're not already dealing with it. And so I think we should connect to even take it out of those target neighborhoods, because we're not even focusing that messaging on the target neighborhoods, but to say, how can we take violence prevention to schools through peer messengers? Yes.
How many incidents in a neighborhood would cause you to come to that neighborhood? Like, I live in the inner city, and every other house on my block is empty. There's a lot of noise on the block. There's been killings around Mount Vernon area. Where are you guys? Come over and see about us.
So it's funny you say that. Well, it's not funny, but we have been looking very intently at the Near East Side as our next expansion. When we expanded to the South Side, there was a good reason to do so. And as we're looking at data, we haven't gone to the depth that we have for the other 3 neighborhoods, but we're just looking at, will we have the ability to go to the Near East Side without overwhelming the system? Because there's no reason to not go to the Near East Side. So that's something we're trying to look at our existing resources and see, do we need to add to them before we expand? We're in budget season, so we have asked for additional staff, essentially, is what it's going to take in terms of having those social workers on our team to go out and canvass the neighborhoods. We feel optimistic, but we're just waiting for the final word to say, all right, you have what you'll need. So we're working on it right now, but I'll let you know in the near future if we do need a little outside help. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you so very much. We really appreciate it. And on this coming Tuesday, 2 days from now, we will meet at the church, 6 o'clock for prayer meeting, and 7 o'clock we will talk about things that we can do as individuals and as a community. If you have personally, directly or indirectly been affected by violence in any one of its many forms, I'd like for you especially to be here on Tuesday, because you will have a perspective that will help us. And again, we don't want to just talk about it. We want to do something about it, and we want to do something that we can do. We don't just want to do something or target something that's impossible for us to do, but some of the things that we can do, we want to talk about them on Tuesday. Again, thank you for coming. Thank you for staying. Let's stand, and we're going to be dismissed. Thank you, choir, musicians, all of you, ushers, everybody, health people who are here to help us today. We've come from far and near.